We've now seen weeks of protests in cities across America and indeed throughout the world. And while some cities and some states have begun to give, inclinations that they might be okay with some sort of reform, nationally, we're still not seeing much progress. But if reform comes, what form is it likely to come in? What are some of the things that desperately need to be reformed? Joining us now to add some much-needed context to all of what's going on across America right now, we've got the 2018 Democratic nominee for Florida Attorney General and the founder of People Over Profits, Attorney Sean Shaw. Welcome to the Damage Report.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have you here. So we've got a few specific topics that I definitely want to delve into, but what do you make of this moment and the prospect for significant reform? What are some of your expectations at the current moment?
Well, it is a moment. I mean, I'm happy that we are here. It is a moment. This does feel different. This feels like maybe a tipping point. Certainly what I want to see is more than town halls, discussions, prayer vigils, marches. I would like to see concrete reforms to policing practices, whether that is a federal registry for officers who have multiple excessive force complaints, whether that is making sure that there's a transparent disciplinary process for dealing with officers who have such complaints, and making sure, quite frankly, that our officers aren't asked to be social workers and priests and guidance counselors and all that. I want to see concrete reforms going forward. I don't want, you know how we do in America. We have these tragedies, we have thoughts and prayers, and in 2 weeks, really nothing substantive has happened. I hope we're not there.
Yeah, to that, I'd like to get into a couple of the things that I've been seeing going. I want your impression. So when we see cities saying, for instance, Minneapolis says, we're going to work towards the dissolution of our police department. And then it comes out a day later, well, it's sort of more of a goal that we're going to work towards. Or you hear politicians say we need to set up a commission or a committee. We need to have discussion and study. Do you see that as the first steps towards something substantive, or are you worried that that could be an attempt to sort of just get past the moment that we're in without any significant changing?
Talk about what? I don't know what more you need to talk about. You've seen black men unarmed on video being killed or hurt by excessive police force. I don't know what we need to have a town hall or a discussion about. This has been going on a long time. It's happened repeatedly. We need to put a stop to this, and we don't need to have a town hall or a PhD dissertation. The policies are already out there. There's 15, 20 things that are already out there that can be done. That's what we need to be working towards. I am extremely frustrated when I hear the term, let's have a committee, let's have a commission, let's have a town hall, let's have a this. We don't need that anymore. We don't need to have a town hall discussion on police brutality. We need to have actual policy changes that we already know is out there, and we need to go there. So I am certainly not one. I mean, I used to be in the legislature here in Florida, and if you want to kill something, have a committee about it.
Yeah, delay. We certainly saw that after 2018 when there were major changes to voting in Florida, and then they've just delayed ever since then. It's a great way to stop things from changing. So you mentioned there 15 to 20 things that we know could have a significant impact. What are some of the highest on priorities on your list that you'd like to see enacted?
A federal registry that lists across the country officers with these sorts of multiple excessive force complaints. For example, I don't want an officer who has 10 excessive force complaints in Washington state to be able to come to Florida, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement or a police department or a sheriff's department in Florida doesn't know that this officer has 10 excessive force complaints and hires them to be out on the neighborhood patrol in Florida. There needs to be a national registry for these sorts of officers, so states and law enforcement agencies know this, one. And then two, there needs to be a transparent disciplinary process that is not housed in the police department to deal with officers who have excessive force complaints, whether it's a civilian review board, whether it is state attorneys who are independent. We need to have some sort of independent process that we can deal with these officers. It's just happened too many times. And look, what about the times that we haven't caught this on video? What about all the George Floyds that have happened that you didn't see the 8 minutes and 46 seconds? What about the Eric Garners that we didn't see on video? What about all these countless, not only African-American men, African-American women, Breonna Taylor? What about all these people that didn't get caught on video and didn't turn into a national movement? This is a problem. It's a repeated problem. It's a problem that we need to go ahead and try to deal with. And I hope we're at the point where we're dealing with it and not trying to kind of a paralysis by analysis type deal.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people are hearing the term qualified immunity for the first time. You are a lawyer. Can you tell us a little bit about why that's such an important part of this conversation going forward?
I mean, I'm going to oversimplify it. It's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to sue a police officer for something they do while they're on duty. And they have essentially qualified immunity, which gives them that sort of protection. And I think we're at a place now that the American public sees that maybe that is not appropriate. Maybe they ought to be subject to the same punishments, lawsuits, same exposure that everyone else is. And, you know, I don't want to give the impression that I'm not sympathetic to how hard it is to be a law enforcement officer. I get it. But George Floyd is deceased. Mm-hmm. Eric Garner is deceased. It's hard to be an unarmed black man, apparently, in America as well. So we should have the same amount of sympathy for these black men who are getting killed in police custody. And listen, I live in Florida, which is kind of a purple state in some places, but a very red state in others. And, you know, we had a police department in Brevard County in Florida literally say, all officers who have excessive force complaints that can't get hired, come on to Brevard County in Florida. We love our law enforcement.
Yeah.
Welcome to Florida.
Yeah, you know, I thought about bringing that up because you mentioned, you know, we have to have transparency across the country so that a department in one state doesn't unknowingly hire someone on who's had excessive force or, you know, whatever. But what about the ones that knowingly do it?
That's a very good point.
Exactly. Like you'll have someone who's brutalized people, possibly killed people. They go 20 miles down the street to a different police department. Should there be some sort of ban against that sort of rehiring, the shuffling around of these bad police officers?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's one of the 15 to 20 things that can go. You asked me my top wish list, but that's certainly one. There ought to be a point where you don't get hired anymore if you have multiple excessive force complaints. And the public needs to know who these officers are. They need to know who is policing them. They need to know that someone walking the beat has multiple excessive force complaints. They need to know this, and the politicians, the mayors and city councils that are largely over these police departments need to get serious about this. The protests across the country have also shown, you know, protesters are literally protesting police violence and are being met with police violence.
Yeah.
What in the hell are we doing here? They're being met with military-style police equipment. They're being met with, you know, the exact type of violence that they're protesting. And I'm sure that there are some protesters that are going too far, but I think this highlights why we're at a tipping point here and why the majority of the country thinks that we need to do something when it comes to reforming police practices.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.